Anyway, I'm Robin from Backscatter Underwater Video and Photo. If you guys don't know me, I've been here on the team for about 7-ish years now. Started as a shipper here, kind of an entry-level position, and then got to be, part of the crew and fell in love with what we do here, and got dive certified, started shooting underwater, became the service manager here and ran the service department for a little while. So I got really familiar with the repair side of things and getting a pretty, good crash course in most of the underwater photo and video gear out there, not just right now, but everything from like decades past too. So it's a really cool way to get into this hobby, a little different than how most people find themselves into this hobby, but here I am and loving every minute of it. So what can I say? And now for Backscatter, I'm the media producer. So you're more often going to see me here in the studio, probably than, interacting with me downstairs in the showroom or anything, but I have the privilege of being able to make most of our video content as it pertains to, reviews of new cameras and housings and gear and all that kind of cool stuff. So it's a lot of fun. I really, really like my job, and we got a really cool place to work. So, what's not to love? With that, I will say between, being a new-ish dad, I'm a first-time dad now of an awesome little 2-year-old boy, but between those last 2 years of, global pandemic and toddler wrangling and whatnot, haven't found myself underwater a whole lot, or at least not as much as I would like. So, I'm sure we can all relate to that in some form or fashion over the last couple of years, but pretty bright light at the end of that tunnel that it seems like we're pretty much at. So, anyway, I digress. That's kind of the point of my presentation tonight, is focusing a little bit more on some of the gear that we've been reviewing and researching and have had some opportunities to go out and shoot, but it's not so much, me, Robin, as a photographer showing you my work. This is some backscatter stuff we're pretty stoked about. So with that, I'm going to kick it over here to our slide deck. Anyway, I did get a pretty cool chance to jump in the pool last summer when we were visiting my wife's family down in Arizona. So it was nice and warm. We were able to jump in the pool, and I actually had Owen, our little boy, rocking the TG5 with a Backscatter M52 wide angle lens there in the pool. He was pulling off split shots like a champ and was just fascinated with it. So that was a seriously proud dad moment. Just wanted to throw that one in there. Anyway, if you wanted to reach out to me with any specific questions, follow up on anything after this presentation, you can catch me, robin@backscatter.com is my email address. Or if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm @RobinDodd. I think there's probably more Star Wars toy pictures on my Instagram than there are underwater pictures right now. So, it's a mixed bag. Let's dive into some backscatter gear here. So first thing I want to talk about are some of the best cameras of 2022 and what we're looking at in the camera world. So right now, what's really driving the market and what's really exciting is the full frame mirrorless category of camera. We haven't seen a whole lot of movement or a whole lot of action in the optical SLR world. We're kind of, all the companies, all the manufacturers out there putting their latest, greatest tech into full frame mirrorless stuff. So that's where we're seeing the most exciting developments. And that's going to be kind of the first thing we focus on here. So right now, the camera we're calling the best all around full frame mirrorless and probably going to be camera of the year for 2022 is the Sony A1. If you guys are not already familiar with the Sony A1, it's kind of the jack of all trades when it comes to doing either super high resolution photo at blazing fast frames per second, or doing up to 8K video with like internal recording, not requiring any sort of external monitor. Combine those with the fact that it can white balance down super deep, like talking like 90 feet, produces accurate color. We have a really, really amazing camera on our hands. Now, the catch with that is that you gotta pay for that kind of performance. It's not an inexpensive camera. A1 retails at $6,500 for the camera body. So it's gonna take a chunk out of your budget, but if you had to have one tool to really do it all, you honestly can't find anything out there that's even close to that performance mark right now. So we're pretty stoked on the Sony A1. I also just want to throw out there that all of the information I'm sharing with you here, I'm sort of paraphrasing and truncating from a lot of our review content that we have on our website. So if you want to nerd out a little bit more on this after the talk, you can check out backscatter.com. This is all like covered in our best mirrorless camera article, and then a couple other things as we go along. So just want to throw that out
I
there.
had a question about one of the other cons. You mentioned that some of the that the lens selection is limited. What are the most requested lenses that Sony does not have in their line, and you have to go to third-party lenses?
Great question. Fisheye. It's really the name of the game here. So, you know, I don't need to explain to most of you that our two most common lenses we're going to try to sort out for underwater are super wide angle lens and a really tight macro lens. Sony has the macro side covered with the 90mm macro that up until this camera, it was kind of a weird lens. Like you could shoot other stuff and get better performance, but that lens combined with this camera is ridiculously good now. So macro is basically solid with their existing 90, but Sony just doesn't have a native E-mount fisheye lens. So what we're really forced to do is use like a Sigma mount converter with a Canon 8-15 fisheye lens. And you could use any full frame, you know, I guess EF mount fisheye lens, like a Sigma or something like that, but that lens isn't, I believe, not really in production anymore. The 8-15 gives you the zoom range and the option to shoot circular, so that's pretty cool. And that's really the way it's been for like several generations on Sony full frame mirrorless cameras. So this isn't any new ground we're breaking here. But if Sony had a native mount fisheye lens, we would, you know, avoid that workaround. But that's we've gotten pretty used to doing it the way we're doing it. It's pretty par for the course by now.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Any other quick tips on the A1 or quick questions anybody's got? All right, cool. We're going to blast on through. Next one. So if not everybody wants to have, you know, one crazy killer camera to do it all, right? Some of us just want to shoot photo or just want to shoot video. So if you're just in the photo camp, Sony has kind of a cool thing here. And I'll get out in front of this and just say all of these top picks are Sony's this year. This is just Sony is crushing it right now. There's also some good options for Canon and Nikon, and we'll touch on those in a second, but you're gonna see Sony here, and think it's kind of funny. So anyway, the A7R4, if you kind of took the A1 and split it into the best of photo and best of video, and then kind of boosted each of those respective specs up a little bit for what you lost from the other one, you'd be left with the A7R4 for photo, and then the A7S3 for video, which we're gonna get to in the next slide. But anyway, A7R4, A7S3, A1, they're all kind of the same camera, same sort of sensor design. They all look basically identical. It's just what's under the hood that counts here. But A7R4 is squeezing out more megapixels than the A1. So if ultimate image quality, ultimate resolution is really what you're after, you sacrifice some of the really high-end video recording specs and you get better photo quality. The A7R4 is also a little older than the other two cameras in this equation, so its white balance capabilities just aren't as good as what the other two can do, which kind of makes it a non-starter for video. So that's basically that camera in a nutshell. But if you were shooting something other than an optical SLR and you wanted best image quality and you're totally cool with a mirrorless platform, A7R4 is really, really fantastic. A 61 megapixel image. It's like really hard to beat. You know what I mean? Any quick questions on A7R4? Cool. A7S3.
What's the price on that one?
It's at $3,500, I think. You gotta double check me on that. I think it's like $34.99, pretty sure. So that's the other thing. Is like the A7R4 and S3 are both close to half the price of the A1. It's almost like literally if you split that camera into did the other one. So significant price differences between them. Housing wise, for all three of these different cameras, it's kind of a level playing field because nothing's really changing on the housing. So Nauticam's housing for these is all going to be kind of the same. Icolight's for these is all going to be kind of the same. That's what's in the camera body that really counts there. But yeah, I think the 3,500 are very close to it in that ballpark. Moving just on to the A7S3. This is the video powerhouse here. What it lacks in photo resolution, it picks up in low light performance. So great for video, not only because of the resolution it's capable of recording and the bit depth and the color and, you know, the raw data behind the video that you're able to capture and then work with in post. It also has crazy good low light performance. So shooting at very high ISO values, getting footage that has super low grain and noisiness in it. So if you're really into shooting ambient light, shooting without your video lights, A7S III is the best tool for the job. Let's see who our staff member Russ Sonoyan right now is down in cave country in Florida, and that was his tool of choice for that because, you know, caves, right? Not a whole lot of light. So it's, yeah, pretty awesome camera. I've seen some of the footage from that myself, and it's really, you know, somebody who likes to shoot ambient light frequently finds themselves dealing with low light conditions and favoring, you know, kind of smaller sensor cameras, stuff, maybe like a micro four third sensor. Shooting the A7S III feels like living in luxury. You know, it's like the footage is just very, very beautiful. So if anybody's thinking about taking the jump up to a, you know, major step up in video this year, that's probably the camera you want to get excited about. So, any questions on that guy?
How's the white balance on it?
Thanks. So basically white balance performance on that equivalent to the A1. Effectively no limit to the white balance.
No,
you know, we're shooting
the A1.
Yeah, both A1 and A7S III kind of share the same white balance properties. So whether, you know, whichever way you go there, you know, if you considered Canon kind of our gold standard for being, you know, being able to produce just the most accurate, most natural looking colors down to like 100 feet, Sony on the A1 and A7S III are maybe just below that, you know, depending on conditions too and what you got to work with. But we saw some clips at 80 plus feet that were like, really, it's this good? It's pretty insane. So A7S III wins just a little bit in the overall image quality department when, you know, dealing with depths like that, natural light, but they're both able to produce very good color in that environment. So pretty sweet.
I had a question about the autofocus. So, you know, I've shot things like the Canon dual pixel and it was amazingly good. I mean, it would like figure out whether it would focus on small fish, but then not be tricked by particles. So it was very smart. Can you talk about how well the Sony works if you just leave it in autofocus? Yeah, that's actually something they've really stepped up their game with. So whether there's a couple of different ways you can do it, but basically the eye detection autofocus, which they've covered a lot in their marketing materials, something they really kind of hyped up a lot on these cameras. Hype was pretty true. I mean, you know, I was just talking a minute ago about like Sony's 90mm macro lens or native mount macro lens. That lens was like what we had to shoot macro with on older generation Sony cameras because it was their native mount macro lens. But we'd be better off putting it in manual focus, racking it to the minimum focus distance, and, you know, putting a diopter on it and just shooting it manual because it autofocused so slow. We kind of just wrote off the autofocus feature of that lens because we thought it sucked. Now, you know, you get these newer generation cameras coming out like the A1. All right, let's test the 90 and put it on there, expecting to be disappointed. And it blew us away. Like it was, I'm not even exaggerating, it was the best autofocus tracking in the most stressful situation possible that we've ever seen. So that same equation of, you know, 90mm lens, macro diopter on top of it, set up on a little crazy super macro subject, and it's locking onto the eye of that thing and following it around the frame, or as a, you know, it's darting in and out of its hole, even leaving the frame and coming back in. It's like it remembers what it was looking for. And so as soon as it comes back into the frame, it just picks it up again and tracks it right there. So it's like this crazy combo of whatever, you know, whatever the camera body is able to extract performance wise from the lens, combined with the new features that the camera's tech is bringing to the table. It's like, that's all you ever need to do. You know, it's truly awesome. And there's just, so that's encouraging, but you had it cited in your cons column. Can you talk about where it doesn't work well? Where was that on the A7S? On the S3. Yeah, let me pull that back up here. Like on the bottom right. Yeah, what did we have there? Was the,
Oh, you know, in the movie mode, I'm not sure. I can follow up with you on that one. I don't remember
Okay.
what exactly. There was some restriction about shooting in that mode, but I also want to say that might be something that should probably have a little asterisk with it. During some more extensive testing with the cameras, there's a really strange autofocus layout in the menu. So basically, it's really easy to think that you have disabled continuous autofocus. Like looking at what the camera is telling you, you're like, yep, it's off. Like I hit the switch and there's nothing on the screen, so it doesn't say it. But if you know it can still be active. And so geez, it's a little too after hours on a Friday night for me to remember offhand like what you got to change in there. But it was like something that we like basically came to a full stop downstairs one afternoon when we figured out this was going on. We were reviewing some footage and seeing all this weird focus hunting.
Yeah.
Even though we knew we disabled that, it was like, what, you know? And then we figured out, oh, it's this crazy esoteric thing you got to go in and disable. So I think that's something we're still like kind of writing up our best settings on. It'll probably come in and retroactively change that, because I think it was just you know, a quirk that's been discovered more or investigated more upon further reviewing. So probably not even really a true con to include in there anymore.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a good question. All right, so what else we got here? So we're talking a lot about cool mirrorless cameras, but we can't leave our favorite friend, the D850, off the table either, because some of us don't want to shoot mirrorless. So we just got to throw a shout out here to our good friend, the optical SLR D850. Thing is, I'm not saying that I haven't already said in videos that we already as a team haven't touted for years now, because frankly, the camera is kind of old. You know, it's not new, but the thing is, Nikon hasn't really said it's going anywhere and there's nothing new coming out. So it's still just the best in its category. It's tried and true. That being said, you know, Nikon has some really exciting stuff going on in full frame mirrorless world, like the Z7 II, the Z6 II, the Z9, their new big pro body one. They got some cool stuff going on in that world, but things like the 3D autofocus tracking, the ability to actually see the full dynamic range of the scene you're working with your naked eye through the optical viewfinder, those are things that their mirrorless cameras just have not replaced yet. You know, they might bring other cool stuff to the table, but those are really the things that make us love the D850. That was what like set its bar so high several years ago and still continue to keep it at that point. So it's a major contender. You know, it's there's not a single one of us on the team here that would think twice about taking that as our main rig, no matter where or what we were going to shoot. So just want to throw some love for that still out there. Anybody, how many people are shooting D850s or one of these Sony cameras in our audience right now? I don't know if we have a good way of seeing that. People just sound off or something. Anybody shooting any of these cameras right now? Yeah, let's see.
I'm shooting the D850.
Nice, right on. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm still shooting the 850 too.
Oh yeah, there's John. Okay, yeah, right on. At least you got
Shooting
Sony
800.
Yeah, okay, yeah, keep it going, Jane. That's rad.
Is there a reason to get an 850?
It's 50 better. Yeah.
I know.
No, I mean, it's yes, right. It is the newer generation of that platform, but that being said, it's generational upgrade from that platform. So of course, it's better for sure, but it's not necessarily opening up any new doors for you other than the tech that's kind of built into that platform. You know what I mean?
It doesn't fit the old housing, does it?
Nah,
Of course
no
not.
way. No way.
That would be a plus. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Every now and then we get lucky like that, but for the most part, nah, you know how that goes. But anyway, let me kick it back over here. So one other camera we've had immense success with is the Olympus EPL 10. So this is a little bit more like your entry level mirrorless camera, and this could kind of spiral into a whole nother in-depth conversation. But the EPL 10 is kind of this really interesting little camera that sits right in between all of the cool stuff you get when you start getting into an interchangeable lens camera and the benefits and the compact nature and size friendly, super easy to shoot benefits of a compact point and shoot like pocket sized camera. So it's the image you've seen on the screen there, the Stingray, something I just keep coming back to with this camera, because it's one of those that, like, in the moment when you're seeing it on the back of the screen, you're looking at something on the back of a compact camera screen. You're just like, well, that was cool, but like, kind of wish I had my SLR. And then you end up bringing it into Lightroom and opening up, and you're like, this took that. It's a really, really, really nice image from this rig. It's a micro 4/3 sensor, so it's really small, keeps the whole body compact. Lenses are really inexpensive and easy to interchange, but it's like it fits in your pocket like a compact. You can still switch out lenses just like an SLR. You can shoot it with a wet lens and wet mount lenses to keep the rig small, but still be able to do everything you want to do underwater. Full manual control, the vacuum built into the housing. And we made a really cool limited edition octopus print, tentacled housing for it. That's like a major head turner. So this has probably been most people's camera of the year for the last year or two running. The high end stuff and the really advanced full frame mirrorless stuff is really nice, but we're getting a lot more EPL 10s into the hands of people that have spent a lot of time shooting with a compact and want more than that, but still don't want to like bring the next size of suitcase on their next dive trip. It's just an all around awesome camera. Or if you're one of the people that's out there that's like fallen in love with your Olympus TG6 and you really like how easy Olympus cameras make it to get into good advanced underwater photography, but you need more than what the TG can do. You want the, not just the next ability to, change lenses on your camera, but the next sensor size up, really unlocking the whole next tier of camera. That's where the EPL 10 delivers. And there's just, again, nothing else that even comes close to filling that role in camera lineup in 2022. So it's awesome. If you're on the fence about getting something that, needs to meet your needs as a photographer, you don't just want something that's going to take a picture. You want to be able to control that picture with manual exposure. You want to be able to run dual strobes. You want to be able to do, you guys know everything I'm talking about already. You want something you can really geek out on and be an underwater photographer with and not be hobbled in any way, but you don't want to have to bring a whole nother suitcase for all the great big old full size stuff. EPL 10 is really where it's at. So it's my personal favorite camera right now. I really don't have any issues saying that. It's the one I would choose if I was leaving on a fun trip tomorrow. I wasn't going on like a photo trip, but I was going somewhere underwater, needed something to bring that wasn't going to be the purpose of the trip, but I could still capture the kind of underwater images that I wanted to capture. It's definitely the one I would bring. It probably wouldn't annoy my family too much. It wouldn't be lugging the camera around kind of deal. So anyway, that's a little personal interjection on there, but that's just how I feel about it. I think it's a really nice little camera.
Hey, Robin,
what's up?
What does it not do that its big brother, like the EM1, does do? What do you give up?
Well, specifically like compared to the EM1, things like faster fire rate, a little better autofocus performance. Honestly, though, not much. Like it's the new, like the OM cameras and anything in the OMD line, you basically get better shooting specs. Like you're going to be able to pull off more shots per second and have a higher resolution in some cases. But what you don't really gain is anything in the white balance department. That's where the Olympus cameras are a little weak on the video side of things. At like 40-45 feet is kind of where they start topping out. So I feel that's something that's important to point out. Some of the bigger cameras are, if you're a little more demanding photographer, they do deliver a little bit more, but no matter what, I think the major weak spot of these cameras is for more advanced video. Like fine for picking up casual clips. There's nothing to say you can't do that. And the color above 40 feet in like Caribbean conditions looks perfect. It's like fantastic. But yeah, that's kind of the weak spot of them. But on paper, compared to any of the OMD cameras or any of its bigger brothers, you don't gain a lot, not as much as you would like by going to say a Sony or something like that. Even not even one of the full frame cameras, but like one of the 6000 series cameras, it's a bigger sensor, things like that. You just don't get much. And so for a lot of people, unless there's something specifically about the OMD cameras, EM1, EM5, there's a feature that really calls to them on there, most people find themselves back at the pen, but there's some specifics there. So if there's something that's like really, you're really curious about, we can definitely figure out which one is the best fit for you. But for most folks, it's the pen, and it's the appeal of the smaller housing. It's basically the same size housing as a TG housing. When you put them side by side, they're the same size. Most folks want to take that instead of something that's a little closer to an SLR size. But depends on the shooter too. You know what I mean?
I see the appeal of the small housing.
Yeah, for sure. We all do, right? We all do.
Yeah.
That being said,
what's the approximate price range on those Olympuses?
I think it's like 1,300, I believe, for
a lot less. Yeah.
Oh yeah, way less. We're definitely more in the an entry level, like get your whole rig for the price of a full frame camera body kind of price range. You know what I mean? So anyway, let's see what else we got in here. We got one other Olympus camera I want to talk about, which is our good old TG6. Still rocking this one as the best all-around compact. I think we can probably safely say this is the most popular underwater camera in the world at this point. Nothing makes it as easy to get into this activity while bringing back images that you'd be, proud to put on your wall or, try to sell or use in some professional capacity. The macro abilities of this camera, again, nothing I can't say that hasn't been shouted from the mountaintops already 1,000 times over. It's the absolute best built-in macro ability of any camera out there. So even if you've got a full frame wide angle rig that's really your main passion and you wanted to shoot macro but didn't necessarily want to commit to a macro lens and an alternate port setup and whatever for your big rig, you could just have a TG on the side just for doing that job and you would never be let down. It's really fantastic. And if somebody wants to get into underwater photography, that's the camera you should be recommending to them, because it's gonna set them up for success in the best way. And we've really gone all in on producing our best settings guide for this thing and given people the tools that they need to go out and make fantastic images on their own, even with working with some of the unique restrictions that are found on that camera, because it does not have full manual exposure control. So in some ways, it actually makes it more difficult to obtain the kind of image you want. But that's why we've made all these shortcuts that just tell you what you need to know, because it defies the logical convention that most manual exposure cameras have. So it's a weird one. It's a smaller sensor size than most other current compact cameras too, but just like the optical SLR world, no one's really making any new compact cameras right now. Everything's going into cool mirrorless stuff, but no one's making a new fixed lens, point and shoot 1-inch sensor compact camera right now. So this is what the market looks like in 2022. And I say it's not necessarily a bad thing, because everything's doing its job really well right now. And where the new cool stuff is being developed, they're breaking new ground. But I don't think we necessarily need to see that at that level. So if you got a TG6, hold on to it. If you know somebody that looking for their first camera, that's definitely the one. If you feel like you've outgrown your TG6, then EPL 10 is probably the way to go. Yeah, any questions on TG6? Cool. So I hope this doesn't sound too much like a sales pitch or anything. I'm just very passionate about these things.
Robin, I had one question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So TG6 you're saying is really good for the macro. Is the pen also really good for macro?
Yeah, and it is. It's good in a different way, because it's sort of the TG6's inherent ability, which is so unique because you don't have to add any sort of extra optic onto it. The pen is great for macro in the sense that using the kit lens that comes with the camera, you can use the flat port that's included with the housing and then just put a diopter of whatever power you choose onto that, like with a flip on and off adapter. And then you've got a really sick little macro rig that you can get in and do close work with. But when it gets really cool is you put the Olympus Micro Four Thirds 60mm macro lens on there instead of the kit lens. You either run an extension ring or there's a specific port you can use for that. And now you've got the ability to shoot 1-to-1 macro, and that you can then still choose to add a diopter onto the end of that for actual super macro. So it expands the range of what's possible. And the difference between the two kind of comes down to the pen gives you a much farther range that you could shoot macro in, and much more versatility in your amount of magnification between that optical configuration. Whereas the TG is like, it's small, it's easy to work into a tight spot and just zoom in and do your thing. The pen is a little more like doing it on an SLR, and is ultimately better if the TG is maybe a little more streamlined. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. So between all those cameras I just kind of ran through, that's really like that's what we're talking about right now in cool camera stuff. I touched a little bit on some of the Nikon full frame mirrorless cameras too. I don't want to leave Canon out of the party. Canon's doing some really, really exciting stuff there right now too. Just if you've been following any of that news, I'm sure you're aware they have had some overheating issues as it relates to maximum video spec performance, especially when underwater and in a housing. So that's kind of a whole nugget, to talk about and uncrack. We go into it in depth in our review, but it's one of those things where if the coolest feature of the camera carries a really hard limitation like that, it's kind of hard for us to hype it up from that aspect, because it's just, you're going to have to contend with a really limiting factor there. That being said, for photography and just, as a straight still shooter, everything Canon is doing right now is fantastic. They're awesome. And at the end of this, the last slide deck, I got a little secret for you guys from Berkeley that's pretty cool. So we have a little sneak peek of what Canon is doing right now. But I just want to throw that out there. I don't want to totally gloss over them. Their stuff's really exciting right now. It's just kind of not exciting for the reasons they wish it was. You know what I mean? So let's talk about lighting a little bit, because that's obviously the other big half of the equation here with underwater photo. So just going to touch on some of our favorite strobes right now. If you're looking to get into something new, just kind of all around strobe, YSD3 2 Lightning. That's just the latest CNC strobe, is the one we're really liking right now. The Enon Z330 is an easy runner up to this though. Those are kind of the strobes you're going to want when you're shooting anything really from a compact up to a full frame system, but you want good, even wide angle lighting without really going up to the maximum performance tier. This is kind of where we're at. So a couple of pretty straightforward pros and cons on there. A lot of them really kind of come down to just the unique design and implementation of features between things like the the YSD3 and the Z330. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for decent, even wide angle lighting that's not necessarily the fastest recycling or the smoothest quality, but it's way better than what a little compact or more macro oriented or close focus wide angle strobe can do, that's our pick for now. Also want to talk about the CCAM 160D, which is basically our new ultimate favorite wide angle lighting strobe. We're calling it the best big bang strobe. This thing produces basically the best beam quality we've ever seen for extreme wide angle lighting. It is one of the smoothest and just smoothest, even as most well diffused, most appealing looking flash beams out there. I don't know how else to say it. They also offer really smart optical TTL support that's built into the strobe. So basically any housing and the appropriate trigger, you can run super accurate slave TTL with them, which is great. They're a little heavy, they're a little pricey, but for the discerning wide angle shooter, it is absolutely the best tool for the job. And then we've got our little mini flash and optical snoot tube, which by now many of you are also familiar with. But if we're switching gears from the opposite of super wide, super even, super bright, and we're going down to nice, tight, focused spot beam and being able to just black out the background and selectively light the smallest of the small macro subjects. Nothing really makes that as easy as a mini flash and snoot. There's a lot of other cool snoot support for strobes out there, but most of them result in a system that's much bigger and much bulkier than what the mini flash and optical snoot can do. You know, snooting used to kind of have this stigma of being a very advanced, very difficult sort of, you know, top level skill you could do in underwater photography. And now you can hook up basically anybody with a TG6 and a mini flash and snoot on their first dive, and they can go and bring home those classic kind of snoot images like without even sweating it. So we're very proud of developing that product and what it's brought to the underwater photography hobby and sport, and how how accessible it's made really, really clean looking macro shots to new photographers, because that's something that they just couldn't do before. So we're super proud of that. If you guys don't have a mini flash and snoot yet, just for shooting macro, highly recommend picking one of those up too.
Question.
Yeah.
Does it work with the Sony 6300?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, so the thing is, the mini flash doesn't need it doesn't do any sort of TTL. So it's basically going to work with everything. If your camera can put out a flash, an optical flash signal, then the mini flash works with it. It's like universal. It's great. You can put it on just about, well, yeah, literally everything.
If I can, how susceptible is it to flooding?
No more so than anything else that involves an O-ring, you know. Strobes are pretty much all on the same level in that regard, because no strobes are really, I tell you what, there's something out there has a vacuum system on it, but strobes don't really have any sort of, you know, extra level of protection built in like that. So yeah, typical, you know, normal O-ring protocol applies. Is, you know, visually inspect, clean, grease, and, you know, safely install, and you're good to go.
Price?
Mini flash and snoot as a combo, I believe, is it $3.99 or $4.99? You'll have to forgive me. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we've got it on the site. It's in that ballpark. You can either do the mini flash, you know, or mini flash with the snoot, and you end up saving $50. Sorry, I just don't remember right off the top of my head exactly what the retail on that is, but it's basically a sub $500 combo package.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so then I got one other kind of last, like, sort of different piece of gear here. This is actually something I haven't shot myself yet, and something I was getting a little familiar with this week, and it's really got my attention. I think it's pretty cool. So this is a new little external monitor that we've brought on from a company called Anglerfish. So Anglerfish was really known for doing some unique lighting stuff. Like they had a cool remote strobe trigger for doing off-camera lighting, but then sort of seemingly out of nowhere, they dropped this little, you know, almost 6-inch 4K monitor. And, you know, an external monitor is nothing really new for underwater photography. We've been doing that for a long time. We've made our own setup called the Wahoo a while back, but this is, you know, something that's a little more plug and play and a little more universal than other monitors we've seen before. Nauticam has had some really, really nice monitor solutions, but they kind of worked best, and in some cases exclusively, with Nauticam rigs. This is a monitor you could put on just about anything. You could throw it on an Icolite housing, Subal, CNC, Nauticam, Aquatica, Isota, you know, like this will just work on anything. And what's really neat about it is that it's an M16, an M14 threaded bulkhead, which is fairly universal, but they include an M16 adapter, which makes it even more universal. If your housing doesn't have one of those two size bulkheads, then it can be custom adapted to whatever you do have, but it includes all the different components that you need to build the ribbon cable that goes, you know, inside like the monitor housing inside your camera housing to get from the bulkhead to the HDMI port and where it needs to go. If you've never used one of these before, you know, it's really tricky because like your camera will have an HDMI port on the side here, but your monitor has an HDMI port on the side here. But this one is, you know, oriented this way. This one's oriented this way. This one, you need a 90-degree turn to go inside the housing. It's like cable routing on these things is extremely specific, makes them extremely fragile. If it's something that's pre-routed and you got to get in place, it's like kind of been a nightmare to make them work. And it was always something that was like, you have this camera by this cable, you have this camera by that cable. Now this product makes it so that one thing in one box works with most systems, which another thing we just haven't really seen before, and it's pretty cool. At least we haven't seen in this clean, this turnkey, this modern of a solution with, like, you know, 4K resolution and stuff like that. So just something a little different, a little neat. If you're a video shooter, I mean, curious about getting into a monitor, this is basically your most cost-effective and simple, straightforward way to do it. So just something kind of cool to check out.
How does this compare to like the, you know, like the small HD 502 and some of the ones that you guys are selling, which we really like, although are discontinued? So size wise, it's similar?
Similar, yeah. So like the 502, I think was is it actually a 5-inch screen, or if I don't know, maybe it's 5.2.
It's small. I mean, I know Russ is trying to find ones on, you know, on eBay and everything, right? So they're kind of hard to deal with. And that was just a week ago. So
right.
It's
kind of in the same realm. It's not like going up to like an Atomos Ninja or something. It's not like going much bigger. It's, you know, it's basically like phone size. You know, you're kind of putting a phone screen on top of your rig so that you have that extra angle, but it's in that realm. This is actually saying it is a 4K resolution on that screen. Now, that's awesome. I don't know how much, you know, 4K is really needed at that size, but it's cool, you know. It does have all the tools as well that you would use, like the, you know, on the 502. So your focus peaking and zebra striping and histogram and all that stuff. It has all those built in, but I haven't actually put it on a rig and looked at the screen and seen, you know, how the menu interface and all that stuff works yet. So small HD, pretty sick. I mean, that was like, you know, I'd put that up there with like Blackmagic Design level of, you know, clever, cool, smooth, like fun kind of menu interface. This is a little more, you know, pedestrian, entry level, a little more, you know, computer monitor feeling kind of thing. You know, it's not as slick and polished as those. It's also a much lower price point. So I think that's kind of reflected in that.
Very interested.
Yeah,
I'll be going looking at them soon. Thanks.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's like a way that somebody can put a monitor on their housing for like $1,500 instead of double that, you know, and having to buy multiple components and stuff. So it's just, you know, it's pretty cool.
And so it's fully integrated, right? It has the monitor and it's in its own housing, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's.
And so is it much more compact than the Ninja with the Nauticam housing also?
Yeah, so to be clear, there is still like it uses like a Canon battery pack that's, you know, accommodated in the housing. So it is still a separate thing. It's not like truly like a all-in-one built-in monitor like some dive and seed products are. It is still a separate thing inside. But ultimately, the size and volume of this is smaller than a small HD. This is notably very, very thin, whereas the small HDs were kind of, you know, this whole like lunchbox on top of your rig.
Yeah.
So this is ultimately a much smaller profile and way smaller than like an external recorder would be.
Yeah. Cool.
It's pretty cool, man. Yeah, this thing's really neat. I like.
Is that brand new?
Within the last year, I don't remember exactly when it came out, but you know, yeah, it's pretty fresh.
Okay, great.
And so then the last thing I just want to share with you guys here is a little parting shot from Berkeley. He threw this one to me about 5 minutes before I came up here into the studio. So this was from that most recent Cuba trip that Nancy was talking about there. This is from the new Canon EOS R3, which is their big pro body full frame mirrorless camera. And this was shot with the CCAM 160Ds. Burke said he was hammering away at 6 frames a second here as the sharks were coming in and slamming into him. And said this was free swimming in open water. This isn't like hanging off the swim step. So he was submerged and holding his camera up to the surface to try and get that, keeping the strobes at low power and just blasting away super fast to, you know, it's nowhere near the maximum frame rate of what the camera can do, but when shooting with strobes, that's your limiting factor. That being said, that's why we like, these 160Ds, because they're able to put out that quality of light at a relatively low power setting and keep up with that frame rate. But this was a pretty cool, completely unseen before, fresh content from Berkeley Wide exclusive for this presentation. So I just want to share that as our parting shot for you guys.
Cool.
I'm surprised he didn't share his over under of the Crocs.
Yeah, we're,
He had sunset pictures of over under of crocodiles.
I haven't seen that one yet. It's a little hard to get some good stuff out of that guy sometimes.
Yeah, I figure he thought it was good because he showed it on the boat. It's like the only picture I saw him show on the boat.
That's awesome. So yeah. So anyway,
I was amazed by it.
That's my little presentation. I hope that wasn't
Very
boring to any of
cool.
you guys. If you guys are as stoked about new gear as we are, I hope you caught on some of that. It's
Do you want to talk about the Ikelite housing that you've got there by your right hand?
Yeah, this is actually the longer format video we were working on this week. This was kind of the main project in the studio this week. This is the Ikelite housing for the Sony A7R4. Honestly, just great little housing. We've kind of been doing an overall setup and kind of what you need to know about Ikelite housings video this week. So keep your eyes peeled for that pretty soon. In a nutshell, I'd just say, if you're not already shooting a bigger camera underwater and you wanted to make that step up, but you're really intimidated by the price of machined aluminum housings, Ikelite is awesome. Like, they make a really, really good product for a totally fair price to get into something like this. Objectively, I think there's a lot to be said for the complexity of the control engineering and the ergonomics that go into it. And, depending on how much time you spend underwater with this equipment in your hands and how much you have to move your hands around on the rig to do the things you do all the time, that starts to become a really, really important factor. So that's part of the inherent compromise with getting a more simple kind of, simple construction and simply engineered rig like this. That's really what it comes down to in the price savings over this versus a Nauticam or something like that, say. But this is how you get hooked. This is how you get started, and you can't beat that for the price. So it's also just like, looking into their product line myself a little bit more this week. Like, blown away by how many different cameras and housings they support, how much like TTL support they have for different things. There's a lot of things that are pretty cool about Ikelite and kind of unique to them too. So yeah, it's been kind of a neat project to dig into this thing and see, like, okay, how does their port system work versus some of the others? What can you do with some of their controls, and how can you, customize things, tweak the position of levers, tweak the reach of levers, and just get to know their product line a little more, because it's not something I've spent that much time with. So it's been a neat exercise this week, and you'll see some video content on that pretty soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
I had one other question. So the Panasonic announced the GH6 a couple of weeks ago. Typically, how long is it before housings come out for new cameras like that?
Very soon. Like, it's on the way to us soon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You think you'll have it in a couple months?
I think we'll have it a whole lot sooner than that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The GH6, it's actually, I'm speaking a little out of turn there. I'm not sure exactly like what the, the delivery date for that is going to be, but the first housings for that are coming to market imminently. It will not be a very long wait for that one. Panasonic definitely strung everybody along with, their announcement of a plan to announce the camera. So I think we're all like, all right, come on, get it here. We've got a couple camera bodies on the way to us right now, so we're going to have that in our hands next week and actually get a feel for the camera itself. We should have housings pretty soon after that, and like might even be getting them in the water here very, very soon.
So if I'm lucky, I might get to try one out at the digital shootout in Bonaire.
I would cross your fingers and hope for that. Yeah, I think that's certainly one of the most exciting cameras to be looking forward to testing right now. And So we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah,
can't
that'd be
guarantee
great.
it at this point, but that's on our short list of stuff to shoot and review right now.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Yeah,
For
I was
sure.
gonna ask the same question, so I'm glad you asked.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. That's looking forward to that one myself. I really liked the GH5. That was, I think, I'm trying to remember a lot of the video content we shot with the GH5. I think I actually shot myself, and that was the last digital shootout I was at in Bonaire. So very much looking forward to revisiting that this June and just getting back to some good.
Yeah, you didn't give a
warm
plug
water
for it, but I'm certainly looking forward to being there in June and spending time with you guys and trying out the equipment. So
yeah, it'd be great. And anybody else who wants to come along too, I know we got some space left, but you can check out digitalshootout.com for that. Also want to plug, we got a couple spots open. If anybody's feeling really, really spontaneous, we have a trip going to Socorro week after next, I believe. And we got a couple spots left open on that. I think we had some last minute dropouts on that. So if anybody feels like hitting Mexico and shooting some epic wide angle stuff, I believe it's week after next. It's not next week. It's got some time to jump on that. So it could be fun if anyone's looking for a last minute adventure opportunity, throwing it out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the talk. It was great.
Thanks for having me, you guys. Thanks for spending my Friday night like this. It was great. Always an honor to be invited.
Hey, quick
Thank you
question
for
about
spending your Friday night.
video lighting. What's kind of the hot setup right now for like, high, like 15,000 lumen, kind of setups like that? Like what's selling, I guess, at this point?
Well, we really like Kelvin lights when we're talking about that level of performance. Yeah, the quality of light, the reliability, the availability, the interchangeable batteries. Basically, just no matter how you slice it, they're our favorite tool for the job for that.
And can you talk about what's the main difference between the GoPro 9 and 10?
The main difference was the amount of built-in stabilization that the camera really has. That's kind of the main thing. The 10 also got a little boost in some of the shooting specs, which is always kind of expected and welcome and nice, and sort of always like the main headline spec. But it was really about how they're able to execute the in-camera digital image stabilization. It is now so good on the 10 that you don't need any sort of extra stabilizing accessory, which again is like main benefit is for topside. We're talking about handheld stuff, but it's so good you don't need a gimbal. You can just hold it in your hand and it's incredibly stable. So doing that underwater just makes it look that much better. But that's kind of the real thing that was like super cool about it, was just how much more stable it got. Was it 4K 120 now, I think, so being able to do like 4 times slow motion footage is nice. Color got improved, so just your ambient light performance with color just looks a little nicer. Things like that. Wasn't too big of a leap. Like it's still the same body, sort of shape and size. I believe they use the same housing, I believe. Yeah, it was the same housing for those two. So it wasn't a, all new GoPro like we get every couple of years.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other just general questions or anything people are curious about?
Okay, I have one more. On
Sure.
your compact flash, the one thing that I still have problems with it is the target light could be brighter. And are you guys having plans to come out with like a newer version or?
Well, I can't confirm or deny anything about that specifically at this time. But, it's certainly some feedback we will take into consideration, and we're always looking forward to the advancement and further development of our products.
Fair. Well said. Spoken like a pro. Right?
What can I say?
Taking feedback on the mini flash, better knobs for gloves.
Okay.
A little small.
Okay, that is very good feedback.
So Robin, I was gonna ask about, what are people doing now that still have big setups and want to travel? Because I've had one travel agent discourage me from taking my 800, that I feel comfortable shooting with, and take a TG instead. Just so that like going to Mexico or something, they're not hassling me and trying to charge me taxes and stuff like that. What people are doing now?
Well, as somebody who hasn't spent too much time in airports the last 2 years, I don't know that I'm really the best person to answer that question. But in general, I haven't really been made aware of any, great changes in trends to traveling with underwater photo gear right now. In fact, if kind of picking up on the chatter and conversation around here, really feels like we're getting more of a slingshot effect now, where like our service department is swamped right now with housings that are in here for overhauls and pre-trip checkouts, because most of us haven't been getting our diving fix, so I think a lot of people are playing catch up with that right now and are like stoked to be bringing their camera gear out into the world again. So that is always something that has carried a set of challenges. Any of us that have done that know it can be expensive and heavy and a major pain, but it's also sort of part of the hobby and getting your gear there, or finding the gear that is going to deliver the imaging experience that you want without requiring a full-size check bag of its own. Maybe it's like, is that time to look at a different system, but there's a number of ways to approach that. But I don't think I have any like general advice for that topic. It seems to me that people are very anxious to get back out there and bring their gear with them. So I think to each their own, balancing.
This was before the pandemic that I actually got stopped. I think it was in the Bahamas when I was going out to Cat Island, and also Mexico City. I had my big old Pelican case from years ago, and they wanted to, they said, "Oh, this must be commercial. You're going to have to pay us taxes." And it's like, no, I'm not. And so
that's where, we've had things like that happen. This kind of gets into a personal preference thing. But that's where a lot of us like to travel with like a think tank brand suitcase. It looks, more just like, a cloth kind of exterior, like a normal kind of looking suitcase, as opposed to a hard shelled Pelly, specifically for that reason. Just because there's still this association, for numbers of reasons, people see Pelican case and they associate value with it a lot of the time. If it's sitting in the back of your car, somebody wants to smash your window to get it. Customs and Border Protection sees you, oh, they must be bringing in stuff. It's like, sometimes you travel with them, you get nothing, but sometimes people want to shake you down for it. So
when you talk about Mexico, that's the way they work. You gotta just say no.
Yeah, but when you're traveling alone, it's kind of tough.
Well, they're going to intimidate you, and you just have to stop it.
Yeah, well, I managed to do that, but I didn't want to miss my connections.
Yeah.
While
that's what they're banking on.
I think it does. Yeah, it tends to fall a little more under the kind of general travel advice and scams to be aware of, more so than challenges that we as photographers face, because there are a lot of places in the world where that does seem to be par for the course to some degree.
Do you know if Berkeley has trouble with all those huge bags that he carries with him?
I mean, I can't speak for his experiences, but I'll tell you, very few people have as many or as many entertaining travel stories as that guy does.
But he's got like 8 bags that are huge.
Yeah. And so we all kind of have our strategies for dealing with that. And that's not something that I personally have to deal with a lot, but I'm not wearing my big backscatter camera crew hoodie when I'm walking into the US with all that stuff. I'm probably just wearing a jacket that doesn't say anything on it, because I don't want them to think, hey, what's this dude bringing with all this camera stuff? But I mean, I've been asked, like returning from the shootout and, coming back through Houston, hey, that looks like camera gear. Yep. Is it all, is it yours or is it for sale? It's all mine. It's, I'm a media producer, I'm a camera operator. Okay. you know, because it's not a shakedown. They just wanted to make sure I'm not trying to illegally bring in gray market cameras to avoid import duties on, you know. So it just kind of depends on where you go and where you're getting in or out of. And that's why we don't travel with all of our cameras brand new in the box. Like they just came out of a retail, you know, environment. It's like everything is, this is our gear to go do our job. And most of the time that's, you know, that's it and that's all.
Jane, I was gonna add that I lived in actually lived and traveled quite a bit in Mexico for a few years. And exactly like Robin was saying, I had a think tank bag and it's pretty discreet. It just looks like a checked roller bag. And like my backpack and stuff I carry just kind of look like a backpack. And I never really had any issues. And also I kind of went that route because like Robin was saying, when your Pelican case comes down the belt, people just look at it and they say something expensive must be in there. And a think tank bag comes down the belt and it just looks like another black suitcase.
But, you know, short of like it falling off the boat into water, it's going to keep it just as safe during travel, which is the other obviously critical thing there, right? So that's why we like them. And they weigh less than a Peli too. So, you know, you're not already building in that much weight to your sensitive scale already. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can fit like everything except for body and lenses. Like, so my strobes and housing and all the bells and whistles and everything in one of the larger think tank bags, and it comes in right at 50 pounds, but I can keep it at 50 pounds without going over. So,
and you wouldn't want your body and lenses going down there anyway. You know, you're gonna keep that stuff with you in the first place. So yeah, that's some good little travel tips to throw in there for sure, and stuff to be mindful of for packing.
Robin, I have a quick question. I shoot the A7R3 and I'm looking at the A1 and I missed a little bit of the beginning. What is there a difference in size, especially with the housing? I know the housing is different. I know it's of course it's different, but
yeah, no size difference. Those
okay,
all those camera bodies are basically identical, and so yeah, their housings are exactly the same.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Anybody else got anything?
This is Lisa. I was in the Sea of Cortez twice last year. I had no problems going through Puerto Penasco, I think it is. And they were talking about other areas of Mexico where they were shaking people down with their cameras. But where I went through, I kept kind of discreet, but they opened every single bag and looked at every single person on that trip and looked at their cameras. So, you know, Mexico's got a problem, but we didn't have a problem getting out there.
I'll just add to that. This is Julian. We were in Mexico last year and going through Cabo with a Peli case, and they gave us a real hard time about, you got to pay this tax. Look at what it says here. But we just argued a long time and they gave in finally, but certainly a shakedown was attempted there. So I'm going to stop using the Peli case.
Yes, our friends.
I always feel like it's so, the camera and the housing, I mean, the housing is so secure in that box. And I remember when I bought it, it was really expensive and it was the thing to get at the time. And it's just, I just feel so safe with it for the gear, I guess. And
so Jane, just come and join me on Team Olympus, because I get the whole rig, everything in a plain old backpack that I just stick in the overhead bin and I'm good to go.
I've heard that before. That makes me sick.
Piece of cake. Stick your arms in your checked luggage and you're good.
All right. All right.
There's a few of us that are all on the Olympus train. I know me and Bruce as well. And certainly.
Well,
nice
Team
to
Micro
hear.
Four Thirds, let's say.
Yeah. Brad and Susan. You'd be in good company.
Give a little feedback on the mini strobe.
Sorry, you have some to give?
Yeah, I really like the strobe. The one thing I think it's lacking is it'd be really nice if it had a red focus light for taking, night.
I'll second that.
They're sensitive to light.
That's okay. That's good to know. We threw that into our video light. Not sure. That is something we could take into consideration for the mini flash too.
Yeah, it has like this little strobing mechanism to kind of do that sort of thing, but it doesn't work very well.
Yeah, that's more like if you just need to see where it's hitting, but you don't want the target light on the whole time, but not actually having the red on there, Yeah, I mean, I guess if you were solely using it, well, no, yeah. That is a good piece of feedback, and we'll take that back to the team. Thank you for that. Anybody else got anything for me?
Nothing else, then thank you, Robin. Certainly
Absolutely.
appreciate you spending your Friday evening with us.
My pleasure. Hope to see you guys all again pretty soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Robin.
I'm going to bow out here. See you guys
Okay.
next time.
All right.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
a lot.
Rest of your night.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, and now it is time for a mini comp. So if our illustrious mini comp presenter Paul is ready for us,